You are listening to Midday with Maria Shilaos. There's no better way to get to know someone than to look into their eyes and hear their story. That's the goal of an exhibit at the Salt Lake City Public Library this month that humanizes homelessness in our community. The exhibit, the work of Amplify Utah, a nonprofit working to highlight inclusive journalism and storytelling in the state. Executive Director Marcia Cancio joined me to describe what she calls a space for reflection, recognition, and connection.
So the exhibit is 17 larger than life-size portraits. They're about 120% human-size portraits of our unsheltered neighbors and members of the Salt Lake community. You have photos that are very much portraits that you're looking at that are slightly bigger than your human form, and there's 17 of these lined up with little stories and vignettes directly from the folks that we've talked to. So the project's called In Their Words because it's their words. There's no editorializing. There's no context to a broader story about the breakup of encampments or what the annual homelessness count in January looks like, but just truly the stories that they want to share, making that connection with this life-size portrait.
Describe for me what went into gathering these stories and putting together these vignettes.
So this was a project that was nearly 2 years in the making. About 2 years ago, Stephen Speckman, who is a local photographer and my former colleague at Salt Lake Community College, and I started talking when he joined the Amplify Utah board about how we wanted to do a storytelling project with folks experiencing homelessness. And so we got together with this project, came together with a graduate student at the U to start building kind of a methodology to make sure we were doing it as ethically and humanly as possible, that we weren't coming in from like a parachute journalism way where we were just dropping in, talking to a couple of people, and then bopping out and telling their story. We really wanted to make sure we were building trust, that we were doing a lot of listening. So the project took about 1.5 years of Steve and another photographer, Kelly Hanna, who worked with us on this, going out into the community and listening and making relationships and building trust. So folks felt really listened to as they documented these stories.
I've been to your website and looked at some of the faces of the people that you are talking about. Talk to me for a minute about how it's different to look into their eyes and then hear their stories.
Well, you can't dismiss the humanness of it when you are looking at a person. Just like a conversation you have with a friend, you can't ignore the humanness if you're looking at their face and into their eyes and they're sharing something important about themselves or something that helps define who they are or something that's even light that they care about. There's something about a real size picture of somebody, looking at their faces, that makes it much harder to dismiss a story.
How has this changed your perspective of those people who are homeless?
I don't know how much it's necessarily changed my perspective so much as it has really kind of highlighted the need to do more stories like this. Folks experiencing homelessness are often some of the most overlooked in our community. They come with stereotypes, they come with perceptions of what they will be and what their experiences are. And while some of those stereotypes are true, there is so much more depth to that. And I think intellectually we all know that. But it's coming together and really sitting down and having a conversation with folks that you're like, okay, your life is very different than mine, but there are a lot of parallels here. And your story is just kind of one misfortune or one wrong turn that led to a series more. And I think that it's easier for us to see that humanness and how each of us are maybe a job loss away or an illness away from maybe the life that we have not being there anymore.
Share with us one of the stories.
So I was not the photographer going out very often. We started by doing street Tai Chi with a group called Understanding Us, and Bernie and Marita Hart have led this program for a long time. And they do Tai Chi with folks experiencing homelessness outside of the library or the police station downtown. And one of our early stories, Stephen, Olivia, and I would go out and we would do Tai Chi to get to know the community and to become familiar with folks and for them to be familiar with us. And after we had gone maybe the third time and started taking some photos and talking to folks for the project, we met a young man named Benji. And Benji at the time was 28. He's 30 now. And he had spent 8 years in prison. He was now out and was looking for a place to stay. He was a military kid who kind of bopped all around the country, finally kind of settling in Utah. And in the 2 years since then, he's now found a home. He's looking for work. And the thing that kind of struck me when we spoke with him just last week is that he has this place that he's living, and he's now looking for a job. And he was offered a job, like working at a bar, but the job ended at 2 a.m. and track shuts down at 1. So he had to say no to a job because transit doesn't line up. So Benji's story is this really great story where he really kept to himself. He was out, would talk to himself, and there was someone in the community who was listening. He's like, "You're saying some really great stuff. Why don't you actually say these things to another person?" He started talking to this guy, Nathan, and they became friends. And becoming friends, realizing that he didn't have to go out at this alone, was a really pivotal moment Benjamin shared with us in helping him understand that this wasn't a path he had to go at it alone. There is another really kind of heartbreaking story of a man named Joel, who is 44 years old. And Stephen took his photo and spoke with him. And Joel had a young daughter, like 7, 8 years old, who had cancer, beat cancer, got sick again, and passed away. And that was this moment for Joel that forever changed the course of his life. He couldn't work. He couldn't really function after the death of his daughter. He says that he hasn't smiled since then. And this incredible loss, and this is, I think, something that anyone who has a kid or who has a parent can understand, like how profound the loss of a child would be, and how it's just kind of derailed his entire life. That was a story that I think really stuck with me, and the folks who have come to the exhibit have said that it was really powerful, because there's nothing quite like having a child that helps us understand each other, I think, better. And so his story really, I think, strikes a chord.
What do you hope that people walk away with when they come to see the exhibit?
I hope that people come to this exhibit just with an open mind to understand that there is much more to a community that they don't have much opportunity to engage with. That while some of the stories may align with their preconceived ideas of what someone who is experiencing homelessness might be, many of these stories are very different. This is not a project where we're really trying to change any minds, and we're not trying to editorialize it in any way. We are just really saying, here are members of your community whose voices are often going unheard. Listen to them. Here are their stories that they've shared with you, from their mouth to your ears, or to your eyes, because they're on this placard next to their portraits. We just are trying to connect us kind of one story at a time, because when we share our stories, one voice, one story at a time, we can build a better understanding of the world around us, and hopefully build a stronger, more equitable, more connected society.
She says everyone deserves to have their story heard. The Amplify Utah exhibit on homelessness will be on display at the Salt Lake Public Library until July 20th.